Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Beginning Photography. Today I'm just going to review everything that we've learned so far. We are going into our manual mode next lesson, so this is just going to be a really good rundown of what we've already done. That way when we go into manual mode, you'll know what's going on. Okay, so our first lesson we talked about the basic modes. That's the easy one. That's just on your dial right here. And it's all of the pictures of the different modes that you want to be taking a picture of. So we've got portraits, landscape, macro, and sporting action. So there's a little sports guy there. And then nighttime shots. So we went over that already. Those are just easy if you're in a quick hurry, just to get a quick shot. You don't have to think about anything. But we're trying to get away from those now. We're going to start manipulating your camera so it will do what you want it to do, because the camera doesn't always get it right. So that's what we're working on. Okay, lesson number 2, we talked about downloading our images to our computer. Because we're doing digital photography now, this is working on something on the computer, and editing it is kind of going to a dark room and editing it there. So when you went into a dark room, you would do a whole big process for your film just to get it the way you want. Then you would develop it. You could burn some of the image and you can lighten some of the image. It just depends on what you want to do. That's what we were doing on the computer, and we will be downloading Photoshop to your computers if you don't have it already, and get started with some editing pretty soon. So we did go over how to download the images from your camera to your computer using your USB cable. So that was that lesson. Okay, camera functions. I taught you how to do white balance, and I'm just going to review it real quick. So you turn your camera on. Your white balance button is here on mine. It'll be different on yours, and go ahead and review where yours is at in your camera according to your own manual. Okay, so you do your white balance there. Whoop. And turn your dial to change the white balance so that your whites are white no matter what setting you're in. You can notice that some pictures you see the white is off, and it makes all of the colors go off. So you can see a picture with a real orange tint to it or a real blue tint to it. That's because the white balance was off. So make sure you get your white balance right on. Here's some examples of some white balance in different scenes, and I'll show that to you now. Okay, here again is a chart from Digital Camera World. If you're interested in getting a closer look at that, you can go to their website. But here's just an idea of what in degrees in Kelvin the color of light is. So it's just a good thing to review and to know when you're wanting to change that up. This next picture I found off of Flickr. The photographer here, his name is Miguel Movier. As you can see, the different temperatures and the title of the light, and that's the assignment you did already. Here's another example done by Stephen Miller. So this should mimic what your assignment was, getting the same setting and different white balances. Now we're talking about your focusing options. Remember those autofocus points that I taught you how to find? So look in your manual if you don't remember where those are at. Here are my autofocus points right here, and I want to select different ones depending on what I want to focus in my picture. When you look through your viewfinder, you'll see there's a bunch of red dots that move around after you push your autofocus points adjuster right there. Look into your viewfinder. And you can see there are automatic right there. That's going to choose a whole bunch of points in your picture. Oh, it keeps going off on me. And you can move these points around, and that's going to give you a good focus of where you are sending your camera to focus on. Okay. There's our autofocus. I'm going to show you a few pictures, and I want you to be able to identify what exactly is in focus. It can be a wide range, a wide depth of field, or a narrower one, but go ahead and identify those, and I'll see you in a second. Bye. Okay, so the next lesson we talked about different terminology. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat what that terminology was. If you can't remember what everything means, go ahead and go back to that lesson and look that up so you know exactly what that is. So we've got the rule of thirds, shutter speed, aperture, depth of field, ISO. These are sounding familiar now, aren't they? Because we've talked about them so much. Manual mode, exposure, lens, focus, flash, shooting mode or drive mode, and that's it. So go ahead and go to the previous lesson. I talked about that if you don't remember the terminology for that, or you can just look it up. You can just Google it and get the definitions there, but that's where we're at. Okay, then we talked about drive modes. Different drive modes is how your camera is going to take different pictures. For example, if it's going to be a fast high-speed shot, or if it's going to be a single shot or a time shot. And the place you find that is on the drive mode, which is right here. It says drive. Refer back to your manual if you can't remember how to find your drive mode on your own camera. So if I was to push my drive mode, and move my dial here, you can see it goes to different drive modes. You can see it changing there. That's how you control how your camera is going to be taking pictures. Depth of field. We worked on depth of field just by manually focusing in and out to get the narrow or long depth of field. We later learned how to do it with aperture, raising and lowering your depth of field. The depth of field, remember, is the reasonable amount of focus you have in your picture. So it can be very, very small for food photography, or very, very large for landscape photography or something like that. Those are just two examples. All right, exposure compensation. Exposure compensation can be found a couple of ways. It can be found after you push menu, you'll have all of these different options at the top of your LCD screen. Right here at the top, you'll see your exposure compensation. This is used when your picture is just looking a little bit too dark or a little bit too light, and you want to take the exposure up and or down to make it just look perfect. So you would go ahead and select that with your set button, and you're good to go. Shutter speed, or the mode that we learned to manipulate our shutter speed, is the TV on a Canon or a S on any kind of other camera for shutter. TV stands for time value on a Canon. So when you use in your creative mode, you use your TV or your S, you're manipulating your shutter speed, you are changing, you only have control of the shutter speed. Nothing else you have control over. The camera takes care of that for you. So if you go to a sporting event and you've got to catch something really, really quick, and you don't want to think about how manually to get the picture that you want, you would just go to your shutter speed, your shutter speed, and change that real fast. Also, if you want to slow it down for, say, a waterfall or to catch motion in a passing car, you can do that too. But you would need to use a tripod, remember, because you don't want to get that blurry picture. Okay, now we're going to be talking about aperture value. Aperture is the length of focus that you have in your camera. You use your aperture in different stops. If you have an aperture, say, of a 1.4, that means there was a burst of light into your camera and not much in focus. If you have an aperture of an f/22, that means there was a long time that the light was coming into your camera and you're going to have a lot in focus. So aperture values go up and down in stops. That's the measurement that you use. I use my aperture value a lot during photo shoots, especially when there's kids involved and I need to get a quick picture of them doing something silly. I want the background to be not a distraction, so that would be blurred out. I use a small aperture to get that good portrait. Okay, next we have the ISO. Your ISO is controlled by a button at the top here. Refer back to your manual to find out where your ISO is, just for reference. I push that button, my ISO button, and that will move this number up, there we go, up and down. The ISO is the sensitivity of your image sensor inside your camera. When film was used, the film had different numbers on it. It was called the ASA. So if it was an ASA of 100, it could go up and down depending on how sensitive you wanted your film to be. Making your ISO go up contributes to a more grainy image. Also, it's known as noise. So if you have a dark image with a very high ISO, you're going to see a lot of grain. Okay, that was just a quick review. I hope you enjoyed all of those examples. For your homework, I'm going to have you do, it's kind of a long one. I need you to go over and read your manual so you know exactly everything we talked about in detail. Now, there will be things in your manual that we didn't talk about, and that's okay. This is all about learning new things. And so read your manual. That's going to take probably a couple of hours to do a nice thorough job. But I want you to completely understand how to work your camera before we go into manual. That's for the next lesson. So the three main that I want you to review on are the ISO, the aperture, and the shutter speed. Those three together is how light comes into your camera and makes an image. So those are the three big important things I want you to look at. So read your manual and focus on ISO, aperture value, and your shutter speed, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.